This week's project is kind of a combination. It takes the feature ring that I made 2 weeks ago and uses that as an accent for a twice turned maple bowl that I've done. Stay tuned to see how it all came together. So for this project, I'm actually starting with a wet piece of wood. This was a tree, a maple tree that was cut down in the spring. I'm showing it here in slow motion. You can see the continuous wood chip that's coming off, and wet wood cuts very, very fast. So if you're a regular follower, I thank you for that. My video 2 weeks ago was on the creation of this Chevron segmented feature ring, and this video is just going to be how I use that feature ring in a bowl. Now that I've shaped the outside of the bowl, I'm going to flip around to the inside. Again, this bowl is wet, which means it's going to cut very easily and very quickly. I think I ended up hollowing this bowl out in about 5 minutes. Again, you can see the amount of shavings that are coming off very easily and very quickly. Just for reference sake, the speed at which I'm showing this is 2 times. Stop every once in a while just to check the thickness. At this point, this bowl has to go into my kiln, so I'm going to leave it thicker than I normally would, almost an inch thick. So I just want to check and make sure that it's uniform and that the bottom is also an inch thick. Here I'm just flattening the rim out a little bit. I'm going to have to go back and do this again anyways, because as it dries, it will warp and it will change that rim. But again, I'm doing it now just to keep everything consistent before it goes into the kiln. If you put something in the kiln with some spots thicker than others, you do run the risk of cracking. So now you can see where the Chevron feature ring is going to fit on the bowl. It's going to sit on top here where I've leveled it out. You can see here on my moisture meter that this bowl was well over 30% before I put it into my kiln. So this bowl spent about 5 days in my kiln, and I'll link a video up here to that kiln video, but this bowl went in at 30+% moisture. This tree was only cut down in the spring, and it's now dried down to below 10% in a week in my kiln, and I have no cracks. But now I've got a good square tenon, so I'll be able to put this bowl back in the way it should go. I don't know if you can tell or not. Right there, that's humped up, and it's humped up here a bit, so I'll square that up. And again, when a bowl goes out around, this is the way the tree was growing. There's a center line. It will, as it dries, it shrinks in this direction. I was going to say it grows in this direction, but more likely it just shrinks in the opposite direction. So this side will be longer in the direction of the tree growth. Well, let's get that in the lathe. We'll just square up enough off the outside to make it round again, and then we will move to the inside and make it as thin as we want to. Now, remember, this bowl is going to get the Chevron ring added to it, so I actually won't take the inside down now until I get the Chevron glued on. So this is my Chevron, so that's going to be glued on. You can see now, because of the warp, it doesn't fit. This is flat. So I'll flatten that up. That's probably all I'll do, actually, is just flatten that up center that on there, and then work on the inside. As I mentioned, because this is warped, I need to just take my bowl gouge and flatten the top rim out of the bowl, which is going to be where I'm going to mount the feature ring. In order to make sure that it's flat, I just use a sanding stick with sandpaper on it that can reach all the way across the bowl. Here, so as long as I'm touching on both sides, and I'm square here, I don't see any gap, then I know, and I'm square there, then I know that I'm not only flat but also square. So now I've got this diameter matching the diameter of my chevron ring. I can glue it on, and then once I glue it on, then I'll true the outside of the bowl up with this chevron ring. So it's flat, it's taken the rock out of it, so I'll be able to glue that on, and it's the right diameter. So now I know that's the diameter of my bowl, and I can work the rest of the outside to meet that. But I think I'll go ahead and glue it on first, and then just do both of them together. I did this off camera, but I added lots of glue to the feature ring, and then just pressed it into place. And this is how I clamped it while the glue dried. I just used the tailstock on my lathe and tightened that up, and that applied enough pressure to hold it in place until the glue had dried. So I let that glue dry overnight before I removed my tailstock. Once that's done, then I can finish shaping the bottom part of the bowl and make sure that I've got a nice smooth transition from the bottom of the bowl to the feature ring itself. The other thing I did is I also put a slight profile on the feature ring. I didn't have a lot of thickness in my feature ring, if you remember the video from 2 weeks ago, but I was able to put a small amount of profile on that ring. Now, I won't bore you, but this is going to be the top, and I'm going excuse me, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to flatten this out. That's going to be glued onto the top of that ring. So I'm going to just take the tool across here, smooth out this inside, shape it a bit, and then sand this flat the same way we did on the previous surface. So this was a part I did not show in the previous gluing up of the ring. I just spread some glue all the way around that rim, made sure that I had lots. Not a good point to be stingy. Once I do that, I just spread it around so that I get good coverage. Usually find my finger is the best thing to do that with. And then once that's done, I'll put that on the lid, same as I did the bottom. I'll just hold it up into place and then use my tailstock. This time I don't need the board because I can press directly on the bottom of that bowl where my tenon is and apply all the pressure that I need there in order to hold it into place while the glue dries. Same as before, I left the tailstock engaged, putting pressure on that for 24 hours to make sure that the glue had set up. Once that's all done, now I can shape the total bowl right from the bottom right to the top. Again, putting a small profile on the feature ring and make sure that I blend that into the top of the bowl as well. Now that the bowl has been shaped, I'll do the sanding. I won't show all the sanding. It's very repetitive. I start at 80 grit and work my way up to 220, and then I apply sanding sealer. Sanding sealer just helps really seal the grain up, and it makes it easier to sand the final coats. Once that sanding sealer is dried, I'll continue from 220 on up to 600. I started to apply the tung oil and I realized I wasn't recording it. And some people like to see this. It is a dramatic result. So I'm just going to rub the tung oil on here. This will be the first coat, so I'm going to put lots on it. But you can see how things really start to pop. The other thing is I'm going to do a technique that I sometimes do, which helps just fill in any small voids, because there are a couple in this ring. If I can point them out, there's one right there, a little bit right there. Wet sanding with tung oil is going to help. I want to put lots of tung oil on, get it nice and wet, and then do some wet sanding. As you do that, it creates a bit of a slurry, and that slurry will just help close some of those up. They're not structural because they're not big enough. It's not a concern that way. It's just an appearance thing. And again, they're not bad, but I don't want them there at all. It does give a really nice finish to do some wet sanding, and then I'll apply some more after that as a final finish. As I was applying it with that technique, a little bit was flinging off. Not too bad, because I wasn't putting a lot on and wet sanding it at the same time. So we'll let that sit, and then we'll put a couple more coats on. And subsequent coats could be put on off the lathe as well. So this is the outside, pretty well finished now. Like I say, I've got a couple more coats to do, but for the most part, that's pretty well finished. Then we'll flip it around and we'll work on the inside. So I don't know if I mentioned it, but I ended up having a tenon on the top and the bottom, which was useful. I could mount it in each tenon and work either direction. I'm not going to use the tenon up here anymore, because what I'm going to be doing is cutting an opening. Right now this is enclosed. I'm going to cut an opening in this. We'll put a decorative rim on here, and then we'll do some sanding to the inside. Although, as I constructed it, I did a lot of sanding on the inside already, so I should be in good shape there and require very little work on the inside. So let's go ahead and at least create our opening. As I mentioned, I had kept a tenon on top of this bowl. Now I have to remove it. But not only do I have to remove the tenon, but I have to create an opening on this closed vessel. Right now there's completely no opening to the inside. Before I glued the top on, I did work on the inside, so it's fairly smooth, but now again I do have to create that opening. So here we go. This piece has now come out. So now I have an opening. I'll clean that lip up a bit and do a little bit of work on the inside there, but it's actually in pretty good shape. It won't take very long. I'll come back when that's done. Not much to see when I'm working on the inside. Very pleased with the way this bowl turned out. I think the feature ring with the cherry and the maple really complement each other. It's also a good example of how you can go from a wet log to a finished bowl in just a few days inside the kiln. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, very pleased with the way the bowl turned out. Full disclosure, I still have some work to do on the very bottom of the bowl, but I wanted to get this video out. And I also have to do a final sanding and probably 2 more coats of lacquer.